In this All-In podcast episode, the hosts discuss the concept of generative AI and its increasing impact on the technology industry. They specifically talked about a product called AutoGPT, which allows different GPTs to interact with each other and complete tasks without human intervention. The hosts gave an example of how AutoGPT could be used by a sales team to automate the process of finding leads, composing emails, scheduling demos, etc., without the need for human workers. Sachs, one of the hosts, explained AutoGPT in more detail by sharing an anecdote about his developer friend who had been playing with the product. He described how AutoGPT is different from other chatbots in that it can prompt itself instead of relying on human prompts, which is the basis for autonomy. Sachs' friend asked an event planner AI to plan a trip for him to Healdsburg for a wine tasting, and AutoGPT broke down the task into a list of sub-tasks that were completed one at a time. The hosts acknowledged that generative AI is moving at a pace that the technology industry has never seen before, with many companies releasing similar products that compound the effects of this technology. They were amazed by the rapid growth of AutoGPT, which had already gained 45,000 stars on GitHub in just 2 weeks, exemplifying the phenomenon of how generative AI is changing the nature of work and automation. The discussion switches to regulation of AI models to prevent misuse and potential harm. Chamath proposes the idea of a new body with experts in the field to review and approve models that can run on bare metal. The discussion revolves around the fact that the code runs on third-party servers and regulations are necessary to prevent nefarious activities. Friedberg compares it to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that regulates car safety standards. Sachs believes that it is premature to regulate AI models that don't exist yet, and that we are making AI more powerful than it is. They discuss the chaos GPT scenario where the AI comes up with a planning checklist for a mass destructive event, and Sachs believes that we are not close to that level of AI yet. The potential misuse of AI tools like Chatbot GPT and AutoGPT in causing massive destruction and chaos is possible. The discussants argue that creating and using such tools in nefarious ways should be prosecuted. However, the commercial platforms developing and offering these tools need to establish and enforce trust and safety mechanisms to prevent their misuse. The possible implications of AI tools' misuse and the pace of their development reveal the need to establish regulations governing their development and use. The discussants argue that it is still early to impose regulations, and more effort should go into developing industry safety guardrails and understanding how the tools can be misused before crafting appropriate regulations, while calling for self-regulation to avoid cumbersome government regulations. The discussants agree that the fast pace of AI development is disconcerting, and effective mechanisms should be established to prevent potential misuse. Sachs argues that applying regulation to AI development will hamper innovation and reduce the potential for upcoming software developers who do not have access to political connections to succeed. Sachs believes that there is currently no double-blind standard in AI that everyone can agree on for approval. However, David disagrees and cites biotech as an example of how products must be approved before they are available to the market, but adds that testing the efficacy of AI products is easier. David believes that there needs to be a balance of self-regulation and thoughtfulness in the AI industry to prevent dangerous outcomes, as can be exemplified by instances of software being developed for nefarious purposes. Chamath counters this argument by stating that regulation must be thoughtfully implemented, as it can cause friction for startups, especially if they need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to create their product. But if the worst case scenarios happen, it may be worth slowing the development down. The speakers agree that there is a need to strike a balance between AI innovation and regulatory oversight to ensure safe outcomes. The participants agree that while self-regulation is necessary, it is also important to distinguish between regulating the tools and regulating their application. The conversation also touches upon the fear of the unknown and the need to balance economic opportunities with potential risks. Sachs suggests that self-regulation is necessary for the proper use of AI tools, as there is a potential for identity theft and other malicious uses. However, there are concerns about how to regulate these tools and their application in a way that does not stifle innovation. Chamath mentions that the big AI companies already have trust and safety teams that are responsible for regulating how their tools are used. David Friedberg echoes Chamath's point and further adds that the application of AI tools should be distinguished from the technology itself. The tooling that one might use to do illegal activities can be used in different ways, just like any other tool. Friedberg explains that there is an economic opportunity associated with AI that should not be regulated away. New businesses and tools can be built with just a handful of people. The participants also discussed the fear that arises from the unknown and how quickly people want to shut things down when they feel a lack of control. Chamath argues that while there are concerns about the potential risks, AI tools also create extraordinary opportunities. Also, the US and Europe will have their own organizations to regulate AI. In response to Chamath and Friedberg, Jason warns against letting the regulatory process take over too much control, leading to slower innovation. With AI being used by positive actors as well, law enforcement will also have access to new tools. The participants agree that there is a need for regulation, but a balance must be struck between regulating the tools and their applications while also considering the potential benefits. The concept of illicit use cases of technology being combated by new AI tools and self-regulation by major AI platform companies was also discussed. The example of chain analysis was given, which has figured out how to track illicit Bitcoin transactions and helped with many prosecutions of illegal use of Bitcoin. The use of Bitcoin for nefarious transactions has been cleaned up, and the blockchain has recorded those transactions forever, waiting for chain analysis to find them. Self-regulation by major AI platform companies, combined with new tools that spring up to help combat nefarious uses, will lead to a cleaner and more secure technological ecosystem. The Bitcoin story also exemplified how certain transactions are being tracked and how these technologies can be used for good or bad. The idea of a possible government introduction of such projects was also discussed with the mention of Tor, which is an anonymous multi-relay peer-to-peer web browsing system that people believe is a CIA honeypot. The concept of quickly judging and assuming based on the societal conditioning was also mentioned, with the example of the murder of Bob Lee and how people assumed it to be a homeless robbery type of moment, but turned out to be someone he knew. The group discusses how bias and preconceived notions can affect our perception of events. The recent murder of a man in San Francisco is an example of how biases can take over and prevent people from considering other possibilities. Chamath notes that there is a prevalent narrative that San Francisco is a bad place, and this murder seems to be another data point that validates this point of view. However, he also acknowledges that this bias speaks to how bad things are in the city, and there is a real concern for safety in many parts of San Francisco. Despite this, the group emphasizes the importance of waiting for all the facts before making judgments. Jason points out that the program always withholds judgment on breaking news and encourages a tolerance for ambiguity. However, David counters that in some circumstances, assumptions can be made for personal protection. To support his point, David provides several examples of recent events in San Francisco that demonstrate the city's problems, such as a former fire commissioner who was beaten by a group of homeless addicts, a Whole Foods store closing because they could not protect their employees from drug addicts, and the Board of Supervisors having to disband their meeting due to vandalism. The group concludes that the proper response when violence occurs is to address the underlying issues and make the city less violent. The move on to discuss the way in which media often jumps to conclusions and it creates a narrative about a particular issue rather than delving into the nuances of a situation. Sachs believes that the media's agenda is not necessarily biased towards a particular side, but rather to remain relevant and generate clicks. He cites Elon Musk and a BBC reporter's encounter as an example of this, where the media initially reported that hate speech was rising on Twitter thanks to Elon's use of bots, but when faced with the truth, they shifted their narrative to dismantle the truth and redirect it to maintain their relevance. Sachs asserts that ideology also plays a huge role in the media's narrative spinning, with the case of San Francisco being used as an example. Sachs suggests that the media has a radical agenda of decarceration, and therefore they have a conscious incentive to deny the existence of crime in San Francisco and the rise in crime, so they can argue for Twitter to engage in more censorship. Sachs then provides an insightful breakdown of the different levels of criminal/antisocial behavior that exist in San Francisco, which range from open-air drug markets to murder. He notes that most of the time, the issues do not escalate to murder, but that doesn't mean the vast pyramid of criminal activity doesn't exist. Sachs argues that the issue is real and relates to the quality of life in the city. The group argues that there is already potential for hysteria in this conversation, as it is evident that companies are already leaving the city due to the poor quality of life. The group also discusses how the policies of defunding the police and decriminalizing theft under $950 have created a problematic situation in San Francisco. But the people who have created this situation gaslight and accuse others of running down the city. Furthermore, the conversation expands to discuss the issue of hate speech and misinformation, particularly in the case of a BBC reporter's interview with Elon Musk. Musk was asked about the rise of hate speech on Twitter, but when asked for specific examples, the reporter could not provide any. This lack of evidence highlights the importance of journalistic integrity and presenting facts rather than filling in one's own narrative. The conversation then turns to a humorous exchange about David Friedberg wearing a full-body bathing suit covered in SPF 200 under 3 umbrellas on a sunny beach. The conversation continues with jokes about the dictator Chamath creating regulations and the Rain Man himself not putting Ron verses. The group then talks about a movie plot involving a conspiracy to eat endangered animals, and then veers off into a conversation about the movie Heat and its rumored sequel featuring Adam Driver. The transcript then discusses the potential for automation and AI to take on complicated tasks and create its own task list based on previous prompts. The guests describe this as the basis for a personal digital assistant and a seminal moment in digital interaction. They mentioned the Stanford and Google research paper that created a Sims-like simulation where NPCs interacted with each other and generated emergent behaviors. This has people questioning the significance of human cognition and how much of it can be simulated with AI. The guests also discussed the rapid iteration and recursion of AI breakthroughs in more recent times, with some taking days and weeks instead of years. This makes it difficult for regulators to keep up and highlights the need for exploration into the versatility and possibilities of AI. They emphasize the changes from the traditional way of company formation and capital allocation. With the language model, it is now possible for a small team of 4 people to build an MVP with little capital. This means significant changes for the investors, as their capital allocation model used to involve allocating $10, $15, or $20 million to get a company off the ground. However, companies like this can now scale with much less capital or even be bootstrapped. The host mentions that the VC job is changing and company startups are changing. In this light, he notes that the right number for his fund may not be $1 billion, but $50 million over the next 4 years. This language model now enables young entrepreneurs to disrupt existing bloated organizations that build enterprise-class software with agents to auto-construct everything. This has implications for the sales and marketing of the products, as companies will no longer need a sales team to deliver products. The development of Midjourney and other similar tools means that it's easier for small teams to get to an MVP, allowing developers to get a lot more leverage on their time. However, the language tool is still a tool that gives humans leverage, and we're still a long way from the human being entirely out of the loop. The host challenges the notion of regulation and urges the need for a real conversation about regulation. One host mentions the idea that individuals could define the set of tools they would like to use or create for themselves, and that software startups and companies may no longer be necessary. The accessibility of these tools may increase, and individuals may not even need a computer science degree to harness them. This would create a shift in the entire business landscape of software and the internet. The speakers discuss the pattern of augmentation, automation, and deprecation in technology, and one speaker suggests that the differentiation in code has been reduced, and developers no longer have good judgment. Another guest argues that while advancements in technology are significant, it may take decades for agents to replace human judgment. They note that AI is ruthless because it is emotionless and operates within a budget, making it highly effective at completing tasks. The guest provides an example of an agent that was able to execute a meal plan within dietary and budgetary constraints using the Instacart plugin. They predict that AI will cannibalize the large, expensive organizations that rely on complex go-to-market strategies. The guest suggests that the way to approach this shift is to seed hundreds of one-person teams to build an entire stack using agents. The conversation then turns to the film industry, where AI is rapidly advancing in its ability to create visual effects without the need for human intervention. The guest discusses a software that allows users to train an AI model on existing data sets, such as the entire corpus of a comic book or a movie franchise like Star Wars, and generate new content based on that information. They predict that the pace of AI development in the film industry will replace visual effects teams at Industrial Light Magic and Pixar within the decade. The only thing holding back the creation of fully automated movies is the inability to string together static images into a motion picture. But they suggest that this technology is coming soon. While progress has been swift, they note that advancing from 90% reliability to 99% reliability could take several additional years of development. They show an image of aerial drone footage of a mountain range that has been converted into a cinematic quality image using AI. This illustrates how AI can transform raw input into high-quality output at an incredible pace. The hosts further explore the potential of AI in content creation, suggesting that it could allow for the creation of automated, real-time episodes of shows like The Simpsons or South Park. They also mention a startup called Wonder Studio, which uses AI to animate characters onto live-action scenes, allowing for the creation of movies like Planet of the Apes or Lord of the Rings without the need for human actors. The hosts speculate that every piece of the content creation process could eventually be swapped out with AI, including static and video images. One significant point raised by the hosts is that AI could enable content creators to offer more dynamic and personalized experiences to viewers or readers, thereby increasing engagement. For example, they suggest that creators could write a short story and they then use AI to render it in a way that can be explored and enjoyed in different ways by different readers. This would allow individuals to watch movies or read books with a similar storyline, but from different vantage points or in different lengths, making the content more tailored to the viewer's preferences. Creators could also define different characters and content that the AI could fill in, creating a new model for interactive and personalized content that was never possible before. They argue that this could lead to entirely new universes that could be enjoyed by millions of people through different lengths, viewpoints, and models that are interactive, static, or dynamic. Moreover, creators can now choose which characters they want to define, what content they want to write, or for the AI to fill in, and the dialogue they want their characters to have, which was not previously possible. The suggestion is that this new level of personalization and interactivity is already expanding opportunities for creators, and it has the potential to revolutionize the industry in the coming years. They suggest that the winners will be those who create a more dynamic range of content, allowing individuals to enjoy personalized content in addition to more multidimensional content that is being created. One example they give is the idea of franchise reboots, where people can mix and match different actors and actresses to create their own personalized version of a movie or TV show. They also discuss the idea that the platform tooling that enables individuals to create this content will be the new industry and model that can create multi-$100 billion outcomes. However, one speaker argues that they should focus more on teaching people which industries are going to be economically disrupted rather than discussing children's books and other seemingly trivial topics. The conversation then shifts to a tweet by guest Chamath Palihapitiya, which suggests that AI will eventually require oversight similar to that provided by the FDA for novel drugs. Palihapitiya argues that if this oversight does not exist, we may face disasters like those caused by Section 230, which has failed to adequately regulate social media and deal with misinformation. In contrast to using existing bodies like the Commerce Department or the FTC, Palihapitiya proposes the creation of a new organization modeled on the FDA that employs subject matter experts to evaluate and regulate the impact of AI models before they are released into the wild. The host and guest agree that regulating what software people can write is an impossible task, and instead suggest that restrictions can be placed on commerce and monetization. Furthermore, software development can occur anywhere in the world, making it difficult for the U.S. to limit its development without losing out on potential economic gain. The conversation in this section of the podcast centers around the need for regulation in the field of tech development and the potential risks and dangers of unregulated technology. Some members of the group, including Chamath, argue that trying to regulate or slow down tech development could lead to the U.S. falling behind other countries and losing valuable talent. Sachs, on the other hand, argues that some degree of regulation is necessary to protect people and society from intentional harm caused by unregulated tech, such as the Chaos GPT, a recursive agent designed to destroy humanity by exploiting its weaknesses. He suggests that a possible solution would be to have tech companies run new models in a sandbox, observe them, and have governing bodies oversee the viability of the technology, as well as submit it to highly qualified experts to evaluate. Chamath agrees with the need for oversight in certain cases, but also emphasizes that regulating or slowing down tech development is not the answer and could lead to disastrous consequences. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.